So I was born and grew up in Colombia, South America, a place known to birds with color, creativity, and diversity. It is very well described in the novel 100 Years of Solitude, written by the Nobel Prize winning writer Gabriel Garcia Marquez. In this book, he described a story of a family that who over generation is trapped by its past through an unescapable cycle of history repeating itself. If you have the opportunity to read this book, or even much better, if you have the opportunity to visit Colombia, you have you know that Colombia is an amazing place where incredible stories are told. And sometimes these stories are so incredible that they're hard to believe, especially those related to nature. So my mom grew up in a land of incredible abundance. Her backyard had at least 50 trees, all fruit producing trees. There were guava, oranges, tangerines, avocados, so many different fruits. During summer breaks, she used to travel to a south center area in Colombia where even food was more abundant. She described that daily she would see these trucks filled with so many vegetables and so many fruits that many of them don't have even name in English. In contrast, my dad, he grew up in a very isolated area, the farthest easternmost lands in Colombia, where food is not that abundant. He described that he often had to travel long distances with his dad to get food for the family and the cattle. He also told me that he first learned to ride a horse before he could even walk, and that at very early age, he learned very quickly to use a cloth to turn a dirty stream filled with worms to very clean potable water. So another hard story to believe that he told me, and one that turns out to be an incredible, amazing act of nature, was one that he would describe that would go outside his home with a big pot to collect the fish that was dropping from the sky, like during heavy rain, like during a storm. He said that he would just run and would collect this big fish, as big as he could hold and as many as he could put in his pot, because he knew that that week the meal was going to be great. He also told me that his dad, my grandfather, used to own vast isolated lands in Colombia, lands that he thought they were useless, so he sold them for anything or for almost nothing. Well, it turns out later, years later, that those lands were one of the many rich lands in Colombia that had been exploited for oil for decades, for the last decades. So I grew up not only with this amazing diversity of stories and food, but also I was surrounded by this atmosphere of learning. I wanted to understand. And this inspired me to spend many hours in my backyard doing small experiments. And this amazing atmosphere growing up, unfortunately, was shaken many times because my beautiful country it suffers from one of the longest internal wars in the world. So far, it's been 55 years. A war between the government and the guerrillas armies, the paramilitary groups, and the drug trafficking cartels that had claimed the life of at least 250,000 people and had displaced at least 4.3 million from their home. So I was born during the war, and I grew up listening and seeing it. People will talk about it daily on the streets. The army will cross the city sometimes in their trucks. But I experienced war mainly through the news, especially through those images shown on TV every night. So for me, even if those images were so striking and so unbelievable to believe, that was part of my life growing up. That was our daily routine. That was just every other day. So, but one thing growing up that I couldn't accept and I couldn't understand was that the world had to destroy nature. It didn't have to, but it did. By the late 70s, already oil exploration was a very important part of Colombian economy. Pipelines transporting oil were and unfortunately are still blown up by the rebels to protest for the selling of oil overseas. To date, about 3 million barrels of oil have been spilled in Colombian land. And to give you a sense of how much this is about what was spilled during the Ixtoc oil spill in 1979 in Mexico, or about 14 times the Exxon Valdez in Alaska in 1989, or about half of the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010 in the northern Gulf of Mexico. So I grew up seeing violence-induced oil spills on rivers, towns, and landscapes. And I remember very vividly how frustrating and how stuck I would feel. Unfortunately, this frustration feeling, I felt it many times in my life. One example happened years later when I finished my college degree in marine sciences. I had the opportunity to work with a research group directed by Dr. Jaime Cantera in the University del Valle to study an isolated estuary in the Colombian Pacific coast. I remember very well that we traveled for hours upstream in a very small boat. We were surrounded by so many greens and blues. It was so amazing, beautiful. But the journey took longer than we expected, and we found ourselves after hours of pouring rain under complete darkness. I remember that we were so surprised because in the turn of the river, we heard loud noises, like loud splashes. And then suddenly I remember seeing next to me, like on the sides of the boat, tiny hands. It took me a while to realize that there were at least 20 kids. They were shiny, happy, and they were holding on the boat and they were taken to the boat, to the shore. And when we arrived, we just met the most amazing people. Just a very proud community of people living in such great conditions. So we were there and meet these people, and we were shocked to realize the next day the way that they were living. They were starving almost to death, and all because months before, the rebels had blown up a pipeline upstream, and thousands of gallons of oil had been spilled in the river and then to the estuary and killed all the fish. The government came with tanks of water, small tanks of water, and gave to the people for them to help them, but then they never came back again and left them alone to deal with the aftermath. So here was me again, haunted by this old frustration feeling of being stuck, of seeing how nature is disregarded, and especially to those people living in those areas. So years later, in 2010, while I was working in Los Angeles in the University of Southern California, again this frustration caught with me again. The explosion of the Deepwater Horizon spill occurred, and millions of barrels of oil were spilled in the Gulf. So this disaster was also called the Macondo blowout, named after the Macondo area in the Gulf of Mexico, or Macondo Prospect, where the Deepwater Horizon drill was located. Ironically, this was named after the town called Macondo, the Macondo town, or fictitious cursed town from the novel 100 Years of Solitude, where people are controlled by its past. So no wonder how this disaster really hit home. But a year later, luck would change. I was invited by Dr. Dave Hollander from the University of South Florida to join his research group in the marine science, the College of Marine Sciences. Our goal was to understand what happened to the oil spill in 2010. Our group leaders hypothesized that the oil had reached the deepest area of the Gulf, which was a very controversial statement at that time because oil is supposed to float, not to sink. But not until mid-2012, after analyzing our very complex data for months, I was able to demonstrate that actually oil sinks. And we found it at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, north of the Macondo area. And this is an area where no one expected that actually oil will be found. So from these, a lot of new studies came, and they're still underway to better understand the magnitude and the consequences of the most largest accidental oil spill in human history. And so, decades later, after I saw the first oil spill in my life at age 6, I finally was able to be part of a team to deal with these environmental disasters. And although there are still a lot to do with this collaborative work, both super extremely challenging and rewarding at the same time, finally, I have to say that my personal cycle of frustration has come to an end. Thank you.